The days before the sunshine rush, buzzing bees and a bubble rush, the river is a secret burning, and someday I will feel love was a light. Every sunrise how we dream, the sea touch distant sky, just because of what we do, someday living, someday Thank you. I just wrote that. All right, we're going to have Nick do one more song. So grab a drink. We're going to get that drinks going. About 5 minutes. Two more.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Well, I guess we're live, though. We're recording live. Don't worry about it.
Stop every stopping thing, and we can fly and life can be so Versus not afraid. I am a hurricane, tears on your roses, on these days, you're on these days, I'm not speaking, no strength, no It's the end. It's the end.
Hello. I'm Lindsay Shaw, and I'm one of the lesser-known people of Whitefish Review, but I have something to tell you guys tonight. I actually have a request put into Nick for a song. Hey, I'm starting the event. So thanks for coming to our 30th event. I just wanted to have just a little preview or prelude, I guess, to the event, and it's going to be a song, and this is our 30th event, and it's kind of crazy. This is my 30th year in Whitefish, and when I moved here I was 22, and do the math. You don't have to say that out loud. I was -4. And together, and I knew him in college, which is kind of crazy. Ryan Friel. I partied at Ryan Friel's house, but I never saw him. It was kind of secret society downstairs in his basement, and I never met him until I moved to Whitefish, and then he was my soon-to-be or future husband's roommate. And so anyways, then there's my brother in this crowd. He's right up there, Ian Griffiths, and he joined us in 1999? Oh yeah, that's right, Party Like It's 1999. And we have Monica Pastor, who has been a friend for a long time. I can name so much. Keith Liggett, Scott Rare, Laura Munson, and then I see like children that have grown. We have Ethan, who's now 20. Miles is working the door, he's 13. Anyways. We've gone through a lot of things together. And so I just wanted to start the night off with a really special song. And the special song that came to me, Nick's gonna play, and I was like, oh my God, it is everything that being mid-50s is kind of about. And so, without further ado, I'm having Nick Spears play Whip It, because when a problem comes along, you must whip it. And we've stuck together through all of these problems, and it's kind of crazy. And that's what comes to me, so thanks, Nick.
Oh my God. She just dropped this on me. It was like, there was one song from the band I used to be in that's like really hard to play with just an acoustic guitar. It's probably this one. I've never attempted this just being an acoustic guitar. You must have done a whip it, take your shirt, shake it up, get straight, go forward, move your head, don't you detect it, it's not too late to whip it good. Oh, when I comes along, you must whip it, oh, when the time is going along, you must whip it, no one gets away until you whip it. Good.
Wow! We're gonna bring Nick up for an encore actually because that's badass. Everyone, thank you, Lindsay. Good thought. Amazing. My name is Brian Schott. I am the chief engineer according to the masthead. We like to change our masthead each issue. For the Crossroads issue, I'd like to remind you that my heavy equipment operators are Ryan Friel and Mike Powers. Traffic control, Lindsay Schott. Roadkill remover, Ian Griffiths, our art director. The asphalt roller, Matt Holloway, our fiction editor. Road sign controller, Tara Kramer, our nonfiction editor. Signage and signal maintenance, our poetry editor, Lola Yeager. Bridge maintenance, Adam Blue and Monica Pastor, our art editors. Road surface repair, our photo editor, Kristen Binder. Guardrail maintenance editor at large, Rick Bass. And then we got road striping specialist, senior editors, Ashley Ananda, Rita Brown, Scott Dreyer, Sarah Aronson, Katie Jensen, Keith Liggett, and Craig Thomas Naylor. And our flagging operations intern, Karen Quick. That's who put this issue together. So yeah, 30 issues. It's unbelievable to be here. We're so grateful to the Whitefish community. Thank you for being here. Again, Nick Spear, incredible music. We're gonna bring Nick back up for one song before we get the authors up here. Issue number 30. Please don't leave here tonight without a copy of issue number 30 in your hand. If you can't afford it, Miles will give you one. But seriously, I want everyone out the door with an issue in hand. This is beautiful. You know, we ask for $10 at the door. We're a non-profit kind of ragtag operation trying to do some good in the world. We're at a crossroads here in our society, which is why we named the issue Crossroads. We got 26 writers and artists in there from hundreds of submissions. And one of them, ceramic artist Adrian Arleo. This ceramic unbelievable. Adrian is here tonight. Where's Adrian? There she is. So yeah, say hi to Adrian later. Ask her any questions. Unbelievable. She's based in Missoula. In number 30, you can learn a little bit more about her work. We also have ceramic artist Stephen Brown here. Many of you may have been to the event we had with Steve for his book. There's an excerpt in there from Steve. Steve's here too tonight. Thanks for being here, Steve. And yeah, the cover of the issue is from by Monty Dolak, famous Montana artist. So we're gonna dive right into this thing. I want to thank 101 Central, the Whitefish Community Foundation, the Firebrand Hotel. Whitefish Credit Union is a new corporate sponsor. I want a big shout out to the Whitefish Credit Union. Yeah, it's awesome. We really need the support. You know any companies out there that want to support an art and literary journal, send them our way. And Underscore Art is also a great sponsor of ours. All right, so I'm going to bring Nick back up here. He's going to play a very special song that you might recognize from the title of this issue. Thanks.
I have undivided attention on like these songs. I'm like, you should have heard the beginning of the night. This is yeah, baby. There's actually a band called Moody Bluegrass, and they just do the Moody Blues, but bluegrass. It's an unholy alliance. This is a Robert Johnson song that Cream covered. I went down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. Yeah, down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. I asked the Lord for mercy, take me if you please. I went down to the crossroads, tried to flag it right. Yes, down to the crossroads, tried to flag it right. Well, nobody seemed to know me, everybody just passed by. I'm going down Tuesday, got my rider by my side. Yes, I'm going down Tuesday, take my rider by my side. Well, I can to the little house, baby, down on the riverside. You can run, my friend, until the boy hit the ground. You can run till my friend boy hit the ground. Yeah, I'll be standing at the crossroads. I believe I'm sinking down.
Too much. Such talent in this land here. Little Whitefish, Montana. Incredible. I also want to thank my two precious boys. Ethan Schott, back from college. Miles Schott was collecting money in the back with his buddy Finn. These guys have been here. There he is from the start. We got to picture these. We can track the progress of Whitefish Review from you being a little baby. All right. So we're gonna go with our dear friend Cassidy Randall, who has her new book. Cassidy, you can come up and get seated while I talk about you. There you are. Cassidy is the author of the new survival epic, 30 Below. It's another book I don't want you to leave here tonight. We have limited copies, but Cassidy's going to sign these books at the end of the night, so grab a copy. It is the harrowing and heroic story of the first all-women's ascent of Denali. She details the 1970 expedition where Alaskan doctor and mountaineer Grace Holman led a team of 6 women in the first all-female attempt to summit Denali. Their choices would determine how the world would judge them and all women's ability to climb and survive the fiercest mountains. So welcome, Cassidy. While Cassidy is reading, you're going to see some images that appear in the book. They'll start to magically appear behind us here. But I wanted to start and just ask Cassidy, tell us how this book came to be.
I wish that it was a really riveting story, and in some ways it is, if you want to be riveted. I had an email one day come through from my agent probably 2.5 years ago now, a snowy morning in Missoula, where I live. And there were 2 lines on this email, and one was a sentence from her that said, "Is there a good story here?" And it was a link to a National Park Service blog post. And that blog post was just a short, 500-word post commemorating the 50th anniversary of this climb. And I had been steeped at that point in the mountain world for years. I've been writing about adventure, women's issues in adventure, and I had never heard of this. And I was intrigued and thinking this was something we should have heard of the way that we know that, say, Lynn Hill freed the nose in Yosemite in the early 90s, right? And the more I dug into this story, I realized this wasn't just the first all-female ascent of Denali, which on its own is a huge accomplishment. This was the first all-female ascent in history of any of the world's big peaks. This is a big deal.
And Don, will you make sure that slideshow is rolling, the Cassidy one? What's the gnarliest peak you've ever climbed?
I have some imposter syndrome. You guys are gonna be front row seats for my imposter syndrome. That I am not a mountaineer. I have a serious fear of exposure unless I have skis on my feet. So I'm more of a ski mountaineer. I've climbed Kilimanjaro, which is the easiest of the world's 7 summits. So.
Well, that's pretty badass. So what I get to do now, I get to disappear, and I'm going to let Cassidy read what she'd like to kind of just give you a taste of this book and kind of get your interest tickled a little bit. So Cassidy, take it away.
Thank you so much, and you guys, thank you so much for being here on what is a beautiful Friday night for an alarmingly warm Friday in Montana in May. And to the Whitefish Review for bringing together so many amazing people. Also, full disclosure, while you guys have front row seats to my vulnerability here, is that I had fully meant before this to pee and put on more lip gloss. And there were so many amazing people here that I didn't do either of those things. So
But the context here is that by 1970, when this climb took place, we had sent men to the moon, and women hadn't stood on the high points of the earth, which is wild, right? It's not that long ago. But popular belief at that time held that women were incapable of withstanding high altitude, savage elements, of carrying these heavy loads up storm-ravaged slopes day after day without men's help. And everyone knew that their periods made them weaker and prone to hysteria on a monthly basis. Which is why this was such a big deal, right? As I was telling you all and Brian just now that this was the first all-women's ascent of any of the high peaks. It wasn't just that, it was also this improbable tale of survival. What these women did is incredible at a time when if you had trouble on Denali, nobody was coming for you. You died there. And yet somehow this feat, what they were able to do, escaped widespread notice and basically just disappeared from our collective consciousness. And I think there are a lot of stories like this, actually. And I think it's one reason there's this void in the literary canon now of strong and complex women, and not just in the literary canon, but in our accepted historical record, right? And we're in this era, I feel safe saying this in this crowd, and we should feel safe saying it in any crowd, that we're in this era when women's accomplishment and minority accomplishments are literally being scrubbed from the historical record, and that's absolutely unacceptable. And I think one, that drew me to this story, right? This idea that when you think of mainstream adventure and exploration stories, probably you think of things like endurance and into thin air and touching the void. And few of those, I can't think of any actually mainstream ones that feature women, let alone stories that feature complex women, right? Because too often in our literary canon, in history in general, women were, and I would argue even still today, but especially in that era, women were only allowed to play the traditional roles they've been historically assigned, right? And we all know what those are. Princess, witch, lone heroine, damsel in distress. You're supposed to be likable or you're villainized for being unlikable. And one thing about this story, man, none of these women were one-dimensional. They were complicated, and there is not a woman among them who was a clear-cut saint or sinner, and I loved that. So I want to read you a passage different from the one that's in the review because I want you to have a value add on both sides of this. And this is from part 3, when the women have already been on the mountain for 11 days. And this is the beginning of the choices that turn this into this sort of epic survival story and this wild ride through the heads of these complicated people who all were doing this for very different reasons. So this is from part 3 of 30 Below, and to orient you with who these women are, the climb was led by an Alaskan climber and doctor named Grace Holman, and Arlene Bloom was deputy leader. She's a California climber who is really famous in the mountaineering world. A lot of you might know her name. And Californians Margaret Young and Dana Smith, New Zealander Margaret Clark, and Australian Faye Kerr rounded out the team. So it was an international team. At the top of the West Buttress head wall, a world of ice and light like some realm of the gods, the 6 women sat huddled on the ridge above 16,000 feet. It had been 3 hours since they'd left Camp 3, and another 1,000 feet remained before high camp. They were refueling with food for the climb, except for Grace, who was feeling ill. Her head throbbed. Her stomach threatened to empty itself. She popped a pill meant for treating tension headaches, drank coffee from a thermos, and tried to breathe. She'd been roped to Dana on the way out of Camp 3, and Dana had moved quickly as she had the whole of the expedition. The weight of the rope, the heavy slack of it dragging on the ground, almost undid Grace. The effects of altitude were weighing on most of them by now. Yesterday, on a relay back down to the 12,000-foot cache for supplies, Faye had been exhausted, and Margaret had nearly collapsed in a bout of dizziness. The pill and their coffee did their work on Grace, and she recovered enough to follow Dana as the other woman started up the ridge in the lead. The route was spectacular. Stone towers reared up out of the thin spine that in places squeezed to only a foot wide. Solid ground fell away, and a stupendous drop off either side into glaciers that cracked and moved like living things. All around stood lesser peaks attending Denali like devotees to a prophet. There was no apparent life up this high, save for the occasional raven, and the only sound was their own footfalls. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Faye and Margaret came last, wanting to take their time to absorb the most magnificent scene the mountain had yet presented. Arlene, in the middle of the string of women, was deep in meditation. She couldn't look around to admire the sweeping vista. The stunning exposure, the slim safety of the ridgeline where a slip would mean an unprotected fall of 1,000 feet or more. The need to place her steps in exactly the right spot and time her breath to get enough air. It all demanded ultimate focus. Everything else in her mind faded away. Sharp voices yanked Arlene out of her trance. Up ahead, Dana and Grace were engaged in the same familiar argument. Dana pushed too fast. Grace wanted to move so slowly they'd be on the mountain for 2 months. Arlene caught up. She gave them each handfuls from her bag of M&Ms. "We only brought enough food for a month," she said in an appeasing tone. "That's our limit up here." "Then I'll survive on water," Grace shot back. Despite the medication, her head still hurt, nausea still simmered. It was making her irritable. She needed to get to high camp and rest. This ridge felt endless. She dragged herself on. She would not quit now. Arlene's peace fled. She knew they had to keep harmony among their ranks. The climbing world would all too eagerly jump on the fact of squabbles breaking down an all-female team. The others had stayed out of Grace and Dana's arguments thus far. If Arlene wanted harmony, she knew it was up to her to finesse it. But Arlene was starting to worry about another potential problem. What if Grace couldn't make it at all? Did she have an elevation ceiling above which she would inevitably succumb to altitude sickness? Had she already passed it? Finally, after 3 hours of moving up the ridge, the women trickled onto a plateau at 17,200 feet, high camp. A steep rampart leading to the peak itself rose above, even though it appeared they were already on top of the world here. The yellow tent of the Japanese men's team that was just ahead of the women in their progress blazed on the white field surrounded in snow block walls. This plateau was an unforgiving place, with nighttime temperatures often 20 to 40 degrees below zero, and winds wailing in excess of 70 miles per hour. Before they reached the snow cave the women aimed to use for shelter, Grace's illness overcame her. She fell to her hands and knees, retching. A man emerged from the Japanese tent and offered her a space to lay down. She gratefully accepted. Dana, Arlene, and M.Y., Margaret Young, to distinguish her from the other Margaret in this story, who's the New Zealander, made their way to the cave and cached their supplies, planning to rest a short time before heading back down to Camp 3 for the night. This plan accommodated both relays of necessary gear and good practice for acclimation, allowing the body critical time to catch up to altitude gain. By the time Margaret and Faye arrived last at high camp, Grace had begun to show some signs of recovery, but her head still throbbed and she was weak. As the others prepared to head back down to Camp 3, what happened next is recorded in as many different ways as there are written accounts surviving from the expedition. Dana wrote, "We knew that if Grace came back down with us, she might not make it up again. The team suggested that Grace stay there at high camp that night. Margaret recorded that it was Grace who decided to stay up high, as she was feeling so badly and couldn't face reclimbing the route tomorrow. Arlene wrote that Grace declared she was too tired to move, would stay with the Japanese for the night, and the others could divide up her load to carry up for her in the morning. Arlene asked Grace, 'Who will be the leader if you're up here and we're all down there?' And when Grace replied with a hard gaze, 'You will,' Arlene realized with a flutter of nerves that she was not ready to lead, to be responsible for people on the mountain. But neither was she ready to challenge the older, more experienced woman. And so she and the others left our loads and Grace at high camp and headed down as she ordered. Grace wrote simply, 'It's agreed that I stay.' It's possible that Grace told none of her teammates about her two bouts with tuberculosis in her 20s. So Grace, side note, Grace is a doctor at a time she went to medical school at a time when less than 4% of doctors were women, and during her rounds, she contracted tuberculosis not once but twice. In fact, it's possible she told few people at all. The illness destroys lung tissue, and even today, up to half of TB patients experience some form of lung dysfunction after recovering, including decreased ability to take in and expel as much air, and a third have permanent lung damage. The lungs are the organs that pull oxygen from the air to deliver to the blood. It's no wonder then, as oxygen became thinner, as the mountain reached higher, that Grace likely needed more time than others to adapt to it. Her body quite simply could not keep up, not with the other climbers and not to her heartbreaking frustration with her own drive and determination. It's also possible that Grace wouldn't allow even herself to acknowledge this handicap. After all, these deficits could be interpreted as weakness. Showing vulnerability was taboo in a mountain culture that valued speed, strength, capability, stoicism, and infallible expertise. Expressing emotion, sensitivity, an ability to admit mistakes, acceptance of failure, these were often sacrificed as the price of belonging. Such was the cost to Grace and others of achieving the high places that made her feel most alive. Instead, Grace told herself that her altitude sickness symptoms on her previous 2 failed Denali attempts were a result of her menstrual cycle, and she blamed being turned back on the fact that the men who did so didn't want to see a woman succeed. That could also be true given the popular culture of the time, in which the presence of a woman on a climb seemed to diminish its worthiness in the eyes of many men. But imagine that a woman on her cycle, a condition often used to justify accusations of women's weakness and emotional instability, could achieve the same summit as men while in pain and navigating hormonal roller coasters. What a powerful threat to the very foundations of the weaker sex narrative itself. But such an honest analysis was a long time in the future from July of 1970. Grace admitted no weakness. The others did not contradict her. It would turn out to be a grave mistake.
All right. Let's hear it for the women. Thanks, Cassidy. The women are smarter, that's for sure. Speaking of women, you met Lindsay. She got Nick to bust out, whipping good. She's an amazing woman, and I just want to acknowledge her. I wouldn't have my boys without Lindsay, and we wouldn't have the Whitefish review without Lindsay. So thanks so much. All right, this is awesome. We're gonna bring up a super funny guy who I just met for the first time, Mark Schoenfeld, and he's stoked. He told me he wants to show up for number 31, sit in the back, chill out. He's get the heart dumping. Cassidy was like, "This is my thing." He said once he's up here, he's in the group. So
This is my first stop on my book tour. And the last one.
Oh, nice. First stop and the last stop on the book tour. So Mark is a recovering middle school English teacher out of Missoula. He's a born-again agnostic. And he's going to read his essay from his essay that's published in the review. So this is a teaser. You've got to read this essay. What would Jed do? And you'll get it soon. Part of the process of Whitefish Review, we get submissions from all over the world now, which is humbling. We ask our editors. We use Submittable out of Missoula. Thank you, Submittable. We were an early beta tester of their platform. It's incredible. We couldn't do the review without them with the number of submissions that come in. We distribute, submissions to our editors. We look at them. We vote on them. But Ashley, Ananda, specifically said, "Oh my God, you guys, you got to read this story. It's incredible." And so that sort of elevates things. And it's just a fun process. And So before spending a decade as an educator, he worked as a public radio host, screen printer, youth pastor, and a window washer. Good gig. So Mark's gonna read from What Would Jed Do?
Is this where I should read from? Is this normal? I don't think I'm good to stand. I'm sorry. Oh, it's good to be. Yeah. This is more natural for me. Just imagine looking out at the Austin skyline at 4 a.m. on a Sunday, which is when commercial radio, allows the public part of it to air. So that was what I did. Thank you, Brian and Ryan and everyone else. This feels like such an amazing place to be, and I'm so sad that I don't get to be here as long as I want to be. Thank you, Nick. It was awesome. I just gotta say, y'all know that I was steeped in, maybe not, you don't know this, but I was steeped in evangelical Christianity growing up in Austin, Texas. And I don't know, I was listening to the new Pope today. Any Pope fans out there? Yeah. The new Pope. It matters to over 1 billion people, and not me, except that he said that if you're not in the church, there's something wrong with you, or something like that. It's like not being in the church, like, basically takes apart. It's like, it sounded like a moral injury to him. Not a good start, Pope. Because I have nothing against, well, it's a complicated question, but I'm trying to not have anything against the church, and I have a lot of friends who are still Christians or other religions, and I just disagree. And when I came in here tonight and felt this energy, I disagreed more. And when Nick took us to church tonight with Whippet, oh my God! That is the church I want to be a member of. Thank you for inviting me to your congregation. Cassidy delivered a sermon of an issue that I just should shut up because she already said it. But that's like, we need to hear more of that, to speak about that unapologetically, because as she said, these stories are being erased. Yeah, and I'm always really annoyed in the histories that I read, and I can't wait 3 years. I really can't. And because that's the voice. That's the voice that we need to hear in those histories. Yeah, right? Yes, Cassidy, another round of applause. So, I'm gonna get started, because so far I don't think I've offended anyone that I don't want to offend. Which, believe it or not, is a very small amount of people. But I just, again, I really appreciate being here. And I realized on the drive here that I don't know how well this reads, because there are some words that I can't say, and that'll make sense in a moment. No. I've taken a vow not to say these words. And even though it was before I was not a Christian, there are some things about this I take really seriously. This story was written trying to figure out kind of this really important part of my life where I felt called to spread the gospel, but didn't like anyone I was spreading the gospel with, didn't like the way they were doing it, and it eventually pushed me away from all of organized religion and belief in general. But I guess this was me picking up that story like 20 years later and trying to figure out what happened, because this is kind of wild. It's called What Would Jed Do? And I've talked long enough, but I will say it starts with some journal entries. And I have no way of saying that differently, but this is a journal entry. May 22nd, 2002. Oh, that'll do it. The Lord has known from the dawn of time that I would be here, overlooking the ocean and considering his perfect plan for my life. Oh, what comfort comes from that, to know that he intended this for my life. Lord, let me yearn for your ways. They are my guide. I remember writing these words as I sat on the edge of a rock and sand cliff, attempting to make sense of the journey I was about to embark upon. I'd left Texas 2 days before with a plastic footlocker packed with clothes, a 35mm camera, a small Bible, a copy of Joseph Heller's Catch-22, and a book on Christian theology that I'd carefully wrapped in construction paper. Just before departing for the airport, I grabbed the journal that would sit on my lap that day while I perched above the Pacific Ocean in Malibu, California. It was the second morning of orientation, 4 days of preparing over 300 college students to be undercover foreign missionaries. If I had any misgivings about signing up, I'd yet to write them down. It's hard to remember what faith felt like back then, having left it behind many years ago. Looking at the photographs I took that summer and reading the journal entries I kept, I'm overwhelmed by the feeling of inhabiting someone else's life. That summer, that mission, that journey across the ocean feels like a stranger's dream. I can make out my handwriting on the cover of the journal. I can see a younger version of myself in pictures, skinnier, with much more hair on my head and nearly none on my face. There's a black binder that holds training materials, excoriations about secrecy and directions for how to obtain a student visa. My passport, now expired, contains faded stamps proving where I would travel to on May 25th, 2002. These memories feel like those of an imposter, but somehow they are mine. And yet, somehow, buried in these artifacts, I'm sorry, I have not read this story in 18 months. Sorry, it kind of is like the whole writing thing, anyway. And yet nowhere buried in these artifacts is the image of another young man with round glasses, sharp features, and a thin mustache who stood a foot taller than almost anyone around him. I can hear his infectious laugh. I can feel his arm around my shoulder as we walk through his city at night. And I can just make out the lines that formed on his forehead the first time I shared my faith with him. I've searched every corner of that trunk, every page of my journal and binder, but I can't find a picture of him anywhere. That summer, he would become so much more than someone I hoped to convert to Christianity. We would come to call each other brothers, but first, I called him the tour guide. May 25th, 2002. Oh my gosh, I'm in redacted. Did that work? Redacted? That's what it says, anyway. That's all I can seem to say. To some degree, there are lurking similarities to America. Progress must be born of the same seed, yet it's so different. Here on the freeway, 4 redacted men wave at us from a green truck, so excited to show us their culture. In Malibu, we received strict guidance on how to conduct our mission. We were to never write or speak the names of the city or country where we would live to anyone outside the program. Anyone here in the program? Didn't think so. Told you. This meant that in phone calls and letters, emails were strictly forbidden. We could only say that we were in a medium-sized city in East Asia. Never mind, we could also have leeway to say it was a large communist country with an authoritarian streak. We were also allowed to tell people where we were not going, North Korea. Ambiguity was our MO. We were also given a handbook that outlined security and ministry protocols. This I either misplaced or the host organization collected upon my return from my mission. Both seem equally plausible. I was to protect my true identity instead assuming the cover of a college student taking immersive language and culture classes. To accomplish this, the organization furnished code words that they expected us to use while in the field. Always remember that someone could be listening to you at any time, they had said. So the host organization would be called the company, which makes me wonder how serious they were about avoiding suspicion, as this is an alias for the CIA. Ministry would be called MIN, and we were instructed to substitute SP for the word spiritual. The holy grail of missions, getting someone to pray to receive Christ, was shortened to PRC. The contacts we made throughout the summer, who would each receive code names, like the tour guide, would just be called contacts because I assumed that already sounded clandestine enough. The Holy Trinity was rebranded Fred, Jed, and Casper. Yeah. got to a laughing part because I was really thirsty. Cassie, I also have to pee. I forgot to pee too. I meant to say that. Of course, Christians, family, weren't the only ones trying to save souls that summer. The competition needed nicknames too. So Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses would be called Momos and Jojos, respectively. Competition might also be for our time. English majors, we were told, would do anything for the chance to practice the language with Americans. This, we were told, was not an acceptable tactic. I can imagine that for years, unwitting college students attempted to do men with English majors, but were never able to have SP conversations because the contacts only wanted to know about Fred and Jed if they needed to learn to cuss like an American. So English majors were dubbed leeches. Oh, that sounded too much like the president. I'm sorry. I'm going to read that sentence again. So English majors were dubbed leeches. Thank you. Which was only slightly less disturbing than the code name for the summer mission, the Orient Express. I remember giggles rising from the audience for parts of this presentation, and the knowing look on the company spokesman's goateed face as he ran through the protocol, and how quickly his face contorted and the audience grew quiet as he set the stakes in place. Where you are going this summer, Christians are still persecuted. The communist government hates believers, and they do not want you in their country. The tone of his voice sounded as if he had spent time in prison for proclaiming Jed's resurrection. In the end, though, it was his audience that was captive, having shelled out nearly $4,000 each for the privilege to serve that summer. Much better entry fee here, right? $10 is nothing. Furthermore, every one of us, to the best of my knowledge, believed that the company, as Fred's conduit, was to be respected. They might have even backed up that point with scripture, in case anyone doubted their seriousness. A few days and a 14-hour flight later, we landed in East Asia. As we rode the charter bus inland, I didn't worry about persecution or secret recordings. Not yet, anyway. The cabin was full of excited chatter, and my smile reflected off the window as I tried to make out the foreign landscape in the dark. Then a pickup truck with 4 men in the back pulled up next to us and matched our pace as we reached the outskirts of our destination city, the streetlights illuminating them in flashes and making their stares obvious. Some of us waved at them, and they each smiled and waved back. You would think that they were greeting Richard Nixon, the way the surprise and delight spread across their faces. These international relations ended amicably as the truck exited the freeway and we settled back into our conversations. We peppered these talks with code words that we'd been given. They still felt strange to me then, like ordering from a menu in a foreign language, but I practiced being careful what I said because I knew the words were important. I still believed that so much was riding on our mission, that I could trust the company on its word. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mark. You could do stand-up comedy, I think. Your radio host gig is on. Let's have a big hand for Mark. I think you get the sense for how funny this piece is. One reason we founded Whitefish Review all those years ago, long-form writing is, really challenging to publish. The magazine articles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. We don't have advertising. We fundraise to support publishing work, incredible work like this. So again, don't leave here without finishing What Would You Do? Thanks again. All right, so quick funny story, sort of how we got to Lee Stockdale, flying in from North Carolina. Incredible that you've journeyed here, Lee. Thank you so much. Come on up while I yuck about you for a minute. always blown away by the interest, the desire to travel, the allure of Montana. Pretty cool. Sue Purvis got to take Lee out to Glacier National Park. Thank you, Sue, for doing that on behalf of everyone. That's so cool. Lee was interviewed by the authors of The Flathead the other night. Super cool. Lee is the winner, the 2025 winner of the Montana Prize for Humor. So we offer a humor contest every year. I'll tell you, he has also won the United Kingdom National Poetry Prize, Sidney Lanier Poetry Prize, and his work has appeared in the Poetry Review and The Guardian. So we got something here. What's kind of cool about this is that Molly McNearney, we tagged to judge this. So Molly is the executive producer and co-head writer of the Jimmy Kimmel Live show. She's married to Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy's helped us over the years. Quick funny story, we had the David Letterman interview scoop in issue number 18. We kind of blew up the internet for a couple days, crashed our website. Letterman wasn't giving any interviews, and he gave it to a little Montana literary journal called the Whitefish Review, which is super cool. Lindsay wakes me up a night or two later, and she's like, Brian, I think Jimmy Kimmel just subscribed to the Whitefish Review. And indeed he had. And that's how he had seen the Letterman interview, subscribed, and long story short, that's kind of how we're here today. So I'm going to let Lee, what's super cool too, Molly picked a poem for the Montana Prize for Humor. We offered it in poetry, nonfiction, fiction, and Molly picked a poem, which I think was kind of unique. That surprised me. The Depression Bus is published here in the Whitefish Review. I'm guessing, you're gonna spoil that poem probably tonight?
I'm going to read it.
Yeah. You still have to buy the issue, even though you heard it here. But Lee's going to read Depression Bus, show you his style, and hopefully entertain us for a little while. Tell me, what's your impression of Whitefish, Montana?
Say something nice. Says the front row. I tell you what, Gail and I, my wife is here, we had a magical day today with Susan Purvis, who took us out to Glacier National Park. And we went out, we were on a dock, went out on the end of a dock on Lake McDonald. And I've never experienced anything like that. I've never experienced anything quite so beautiful. I never have. And also, I will say that I went into Huck's restaurant this morning for breakfast. It was very early. I think I was the first person there. I was the only one there at the time. And I said to the assistant manager, lovely young lady, we were talking, what are you doing here? I'm here because I won this prize. And I said, it's with the Whitefish Review. And she said, I said, do you know it? She said, oh yes, we're all very proud of it here. And I think that's really a wonderful thing that you have the whole sort of community as a part of, your cheering section. And I'll also say this, and I think it's it's a vibe that I get from the community, which I get from the Whitefish Review, because look, I'm in the industry. I get a lot of journals and stuff. Most of them reject me, but they then send me very kindly a copy of your. Let's say we'll send you the copy of the journal that you're not in, but that's all right. That's a different thing. I'm a happy person, but this is an extraordinary journal. There's something so friendly about this that is really different. Do you know that? Do you feel that?
It's a cool thing. So actually, Ben Pauly's here tonight. Ben's married to Cassidy. Ben had one of our famous interviews with Jim Harrison in this issue. One of the quotes from Harrison was, "There's something that feels a little different about Whitefish Review." So thank you.
The irony is, and this prize. And by the way, I did want to say one thing unprompted. Now forever I get to say, my name is Lee Stockdale, and I won the Montana Humor Prize. I gotta tell you, doesn't that sound great? Jesus Christ. I thought, well, shit, that's the coolest thing I've ever been able to say. And so, and I called Brian and I said, hey, can I come out? I want to come out and read it if I can. Because Gail and I've never been out here, and we're just knocked out to be here. So I'm really excited to be here. Also, Nick, I grew up with Clapton and not quite Robert Johnson, but I thought, gosh, I wonder if they know the song Crossroads from Cream. And I thought, that's only like one of my favorite songs in the world. Actually, and I will say this, I went to a military prep school in Tennessee. My brother went there 5 years before, and there was a guy there, still my best friend, a guy named Stephen Barber. He's a musical prodigy, and he's worked with like David Byrne from Talking Heads and people like that. He's a composer really, so he can do all that stuff. But he would get a guitar, and like he would sit there and play Crossroads at a military prep school on top of a mountain in Tennessee that was able to take us in a different place, It really fired our imaginations that, God, this kid can do that. We can do anything we want. And so that was pretty great. You're great, man. That was a great addition. And when I heard Robert Johnson, I was just listening to Robert Johnson 2 days ago, his original one album, and God, I love that. I'm so excited to be here. Now, also, I'll just say, because I did put it in my bio, my brother went to that school 5 years ahead of me. He wrote the humor column. 5 years later, in the newspaper, I wrote the humor column. I was never, ever, ever as funny as my brother. Is there anyone here who is as funny as their older sibling? Never. But anyway, so I wrote the Depression bus, and I won't go into all of the reasons that I have and we all have to be depressed. But I'm so knocked out that you published it.
Yeah, we're thrilled. So yeah, we're here in church, another preacher, and here's
Yeah. And Brian, by the way, thanks for putting me on. Where's Mark? God damn it, funniest guy I've ever listened to. And I'm getting the humor prize? What? That's really easy, Mark. Thank you very much.
So yeah, I mean, funny enough, he didn't submit in the humor prize category.
I know. You should have.
Okay. All right, take it away.
All right. My wife said, and don't use your poetry voice. So. And then I always ask her after, I said, did I use my poetry voice? So, let's see. Depression bus. The town council allocate, by the way, I have to say this too. Molly McInerney, God, I love her. I never met her and didn't even know about her. But Brian said that when she read this, she laughed out loud. So nothing was more gratifying than to hear that. So, Depression bus. The town council allocated funds to repurpose a school bus for depression, painted leftover day-glow orange from the previous summer's depression fair. The bus pulls into your neighborhood. You get on, and there are things to do. Play solitaire, read old magazines. But the depression bus will not cure your depression, which is expressly written on the poster with rules. No smoking / vaping, no profanity, no music. Naming the bus was open to the public from April 1st to the end of May. Happy Bus got the most votes, but Happy Bus exposed the town to liability if someone did not, in fact, get happy. In a cooler are free juice boxes and vanilla cookies in cellophane wrappers. The bus has a limit of 20 depressed people over the age of 18. If you're under 18, I'm not sure where you go. When I saw the depression bus, it depressed me. So I thought, I better get on. The driver reading a paperback said, "Make yourself at home." I was the only one on the depression bus, which made me feel even more depressed. The more no other depressed people got on, the more depressed I got. I brightened when I saw Pete. Pete looks depressed. I'm sure he'll get on. I waved, but Pete pretended not to see. Now and then the bus driver laughed. I thought he was happy about getting paid to park in neighborhoods and read paperbacks. I asked what it was, and he told me a title I'd never heard of. It started to rain, then stopped after a while. The driver's laughter made me feel better. He seemed like a naturally happy person. I got off the bus and was no longer depressed. If anyone asks, I will tell them the town council made a good investment. Thank you very much. I hope no one here is depressed anymore.
All right. Yeah, we're not depressed. We're laughing. Thank you, Lee. So fun. So that actually wraps up. We're actually. I think it's the first time we've actually. It's 8:59, Ryan. If Nick's up for more music, we'll bring Nick back up for a tune. We're gonna, we got about an hour to hang out, visit with each other. Cassidy will sign books. I always forget stuff, but I guess one thing I want to express. We are in our church. Like, these are our people here. There's so much craziness going on in the world, so much fear, anxiety. That's what I forgot. And we need to lift each other up. And, I think love is at the center of it, honestly. We have to stand together. We have to fight, too. And we do have to be activists. We do have to stand up for what's right. We have to do it with kindness as much as possible, I think. And I want to encourage you to, help each other. Look for ways to reach across the bridge, per se. And, I do feel like we're at a crossroads in our society, in our culture. I don't know where it's going. I think artists, writers, photographers, we can help lead the way in certain regards. So let's keep pushing. And thanks for being a part of it. Before Nick comes up, our next event, our special guest is going to be Laura Munson on Friday, June 6th. Laura's going to read from her new book, The Wild Why. So we'll have a book signing event for Laura. So it's about 1 month from today, Friday, June 6th. We'll zing you about that. It's going to be awesome. If I forgot anything, I'll tell you after Nick plays. But you're up for another song? All right, let's do it. Woo! Thanks for being here.
Well, I don't know. You want to say cookie? I know, this is awesome. Hey, Tommy, can I get a little more? Is there, turn that up a little bit, just a tick, 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 there. That's plenty. That's actually got me all right. Well, I think we're all in agreement that shit's really weird, and I'm a big fan of making it weird. We like our heroes falling. We like our poets guide. We keep the crowd unconscious, blindfolded with the flag. We like our leaders' liars to grease the female shame. We need the markets moving. We need all eyes on the screen. We're the east underwater and the west on fire. As the world melts down and the fields get drier, there is no hope where wisdom goes, when the world ties itself in lies. We like our artists story. We'll leave the poor to toil. We trade our $100 blood for oil. We blame this blight on the ground. We only answer to laws denied. We keep our food and compassion, but thank you, I got mine. We're the east of the water and the west on fire. As the north melts down and the fields get drier, there is no home where wisdom goes, when the world turns itself in lies. The frogs and fire. The east of the water and the west on fire. The north melts down, the fields get drier. God breaks as the darkness creeps. A half-world awakes while the other half falls asleep. Over 4 billion years on this arena sphere, arguing theology. So say another prayer and those facts live here. We're just another layer from future geology. We'll keep the teachers happy. We'll put their books in control. We'll keep the media running while we shout at the polls. So sing God and country, only one everything. Break out your passport, join your countrymen, as we all sing the West on fire, the West on fire. Okay, now I'll do something. I tried playing that one at church, they didn't let me. Don't subscribe. You start a conversation, you can't even finish it. You're talking about what? What's your name? Talk amongst yourself and got some issues here. Just couldn't feel the solution.